If you've ever gotten a phone call that shattered your peace in the dead of night, then you'll understand why my hands still tremble when I remember what my grandson told me that evening, the night Betrayal finally knocked on my door, wearing a familiar face. It was 2:11 in the morning when my cell phone buzzed on the nightstand like it was fighting for its life. Nobody calls at that hour with good intentions, not in all my 72 years. I reached through the dark and grabbed the phone, the glow lighting up my wrinkled hands. When I saw the name on the screen, Caleb, my breath caught. My grandson. My sweet, soft-spoken Caleb, the only one who still visited me every Sunday without being reminded. I answered instantly, "Baby, what's wrong?" His voice came through in broken gasps, soaked in fear. "Grandma, I'm at the police station. My stepmom, Natalie, she hit me, but she told the cops I attacked her. Dad believes her. Grandma, he believes her." The ache that rose in my chest felt like someone had struck me with a hammer. I swung my legs off the bed, searching for my slippers with shaking feet. "Where are you? Which station?" "The one off Maple Avenue. Grandma, I'm scared." His voice cracked. "They said if no adult comes for me soon, they're transferring me to juvenile holding." I didn't let him finish. "I'm on my way, sweetheart. Don't say another word to anyone, you hear me? Not one." When he whispered, "Yes, ma'am," I could hear the tears behind his voice. I hung up, stood there for a long second, and stared at the woman reflected in my closet mirror. Gray curls flattened by sleep, deep lines etched by time and grief. But beneath all that, I saw someone else waking up. I once spent 28 years as a federal investigator in D.C., tracking down liars, cheaters, abusers, and manipulators, the kinds of people who smile sweetly while hiding knives behind their backs. And tonight, that woman inside me rose from retirement like she'd just been called back to duty. I dressed fast, dark jeans, an old sweatshirt, and the boots that had carried me through more crime scenes than I wanted to remember. I grabbed my purse, but my hand paused at the drawer. Inside was my old badge. Expired? Absolutely. But authority isn't in the metal. It's in the voice, the posture, the history. And tonight, I felt it roaring back to life. I stepped outside into a quiet suburban street in Richmond, Virginia, where the streetlights hummed like lonely fireflies. I waved down a rideshare car and slid into the back seat. "Maple Avenue precinct, please," I told the driver, and fast. He glanced at me in the rear view, clearly reading the urgency on my face. "Yes, ma'am." As we drove, I stared out at passing street lamps, but didn't see anything. All I could hear was Caleb's voice, small and shaking. My son, my only child, once adored me. After his first wife died, he leaned on me for everything. But then, he met her, Natalie. A woman who smiles too hard and talks too soft, the kind whose sweetness tasted strange from the start. A woman who managed in a few short years to twist my son into a stranger. And now, she'd gone after my grandson. When we reached the precinct, I thanked the driver and headed inside. The young officer at the front desk looked up, casual at first, until I told him my name. "Ma'am, who are you here for?" "My grandson, Caleb Walker." He checked a form, then froze just slightly, as if a memory flickered behind his eyes. "Walker? Are you related to former agent Lucille Walker?" "I am," I said simply. He straightened in his seat, suddenly respectful. "Yes, ma'am. He's in the waiting room with his parents. Officer Ramirez is handling the complaint." "Take me to my grandson." My voice came out firm, commanding, the voice I thought I'd buried years ago. He nodded quickly. "Yes, ma'am." The hallway felt like walking back into a past life, every echo reminding me of the cases I once closed, the criminals I once cornered, the lies I once exposed. But nothing prepared me for what I found in that waiting room. And nothing prepared my son for the truth I was about to uncover. Some betrayals don't walk through the front door. They sit in the waiting room with a smile so rehearsed it feels like a performance. And that night, I walked right into the middle of one. The officer led me down a narrow hallway, the kind that smelled like old coffee and tired fluorescent lights. When we turned the corner into the precinct waiting area, my heart tugged in two directions at once. Caleb was sitting alone on a plastic chair in the corner, shoulders tight, knees pulled close, eyes red like he'd been fighting back tears for hours. My son, Marcus, sat across from him, arms folded, jaw clenched, looking everywhere except at his own child. And beside him, like a queen perched on a crooked throne, was his wife, Natalie. Legs crossed, designer coat wrapped around her like armor, her eyes drifting lazily over her phone screen, pretending not to see the mess she created. The second Caleb spotted me, he stood. The relief on his face, goodness, I felt it down in my bones. "Grandma." He moved toward me fast, almost tripping over his own feet. I opened my arms wide, and he tucked himself against me like he used to as a little boy. His shoulders shook, but he held himself together. "I'm here now," I whispered into his hair. "You're safe." The room seemed to notice all at once who I was. Marcus cleared his throat. "Mom, you didn't need to come all the way out here." I turned to face him, keeping Caleb behind me. "I got a call at 2 in the morning telling me my grandson was nearly taken to juvenile holding. You don't get to tell me what I needed to do." He looked down, but only for a second, before Natalie chimed in, her voice sweet and sour at the same time. "Lucille, there's been a misunderstanding. Caleb had one of his moods again, and he got physical with me. I was defending myself." The lie floated in the air like a foul smell. Caleb stiffened behind me. "That's not what happened," he whispered. I didn't look at her. Not yet. I studied Marcus instead. The son I raised, the man who used to tell me everything, the man who now sat silent while his wife framed his child. "Marcus," I said softly, "did you see anything yourself?" He swallowed. "Natalie wouldn't lie to me." My heart cracked. Not fully, but enough for the pain to slip through. Before I could respond, Officer Ramirez walked in with a clipboard. "Mrs. Walker, we're ready for your statement." I stepped aside so he could speak to Caleb, but Ramirez shook his head politely. "No, ma'am, I meant you. We need an adult relative to sign him out." Natalie let out a soft laugh, the kind that tries to sound innocent but is sharpened at the edges. "Well, officer, we're his legal guardians, so I don't think—" Ramirez cut her off. "Actually, ma'am, because you're the complainant, you can't sign him out." Her face froze. She didn't expect resistance tonight. I followed Ramirez into a small room where he explained everything in plain detail. Her claim, Caleb's injuries, the inconsistencies in her story, the officer who arrived first and noticed she was the only one with no marks at all. When I saw the faint bruise rising on Caleb's arm in the photographs, something inside me woke up fully. The old instincts, the investigative mind, the grandmother's fury. "Officer Ramirez," I said, voice low, "tell me exactly what she said happened." He did, and every word felt like a puzzle piece being forced into the wrong place. Nothing matched, nothing aligned. It was the kind of lie you tell when you've rehearsed the performance, but forgot the script halfway through. When I stepped back out into the waiting room, I wasn't the sleepy grandmother who arrived here 30 minutes earlier. I was the woman who once cracked a federal embezzlement case using nothing but silence and observation. I walked up to Natalie slowly. She lifted her chin like she'd been waiting. "So," she purred, "are we done here?" "Oh no," I said, leaning close. "We're just getting started." Her eyes flickered, just for a moment, but that moment told me everything. This wasn't the first time she'd hurt my grandson, and it wasn't going to be the last, unless I exposed her. People think betrayal shows up in loud ways, but the truth is, the deepest cuts come quietly. They come from inside your own home, delivered by someone you once welcomed with open arms. When I stepped back into the waiting room, I could feel eyes tracking me, the way prey watches a predator who suddenly remembers she has teeth. Natalie shifted, tugging her coat tighter even though the room was warm. Caleb stayed behind me, close enough that I could feel his breath steadying. I touched his arm gently. "Sweetheart, go sit for a moment. I need to speak with your father." He obeyed, but his eyes lingered on mine, asking if he was really safe. I gave him the smallest nod. That was enough. I walked up to Marcus, my only child, the boy I raised on discipline, prayer, and the truth. The man now staring at the floor like it held answers he couldn't face. "Look at me," I said, softly. He lifted his head, and for the first time since I arrived, I saw fear, not of me, but of what he'd allowed to happen under his roof. "Marcus," I said, "tell me why you believe her." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "Mom, I just want peace in my house. You know how hard it's been. Ever since Jenna died, everything's been upside down. Natalie, she tries, and Caleb, he's been distant, angry, withdrawn." Withdrawn? Of course he was. Children don't bloom in the shade of someone who dims their light. "And you think he attacked her?" I asked. He hesitated. That split second told me everything. "I don't know," he whispered. "I wasn't there." "And she was?" I asked. His shoulders slumped. Before he could answer, Officer Ramirez approached again. "Mr. Walker, ma'am, we have one more thing." He handed me a small plastic bag. Inside was something I didn't expect to see in a domestic complaint. A broken phone. Caleb's. "Where did you find this?" I asked. "Under the dining table," Ramirez said. "Your grandson says he tried to call for help before she hit him. That's when the phone was snatched and thrown." Something hot climbed up my spine. I held the phone carefully, like it was a wounded animal. I turned to Caleb. "Is this true?" He nodded once. Not dramatic, not rehearsed, just the truth, simple and quiet. "He said nobody would believe me," he whispered. I did not need to ask who he was. My son. The man standing 10 feet away from his own child like he didn't recognize him. Natalie stood up quickly. "That is not what happened. That phone was already broken this morning. Caleb is twisting everything." I looked at her. Really looked. Most people don't know how to spot liars, but I spent half my life watching people crumble under one simple technique. Silence. So I said nothing. I just stared at her, and she panicked. Well, why are you looking at me like that? You don't know what really happened. You weren't there." Still, I didn't speak. Her voice cracked first. They always crack. "I'm telling the truth. He's lying. Teenagers lie. They lie all the time." I stepped closer. "Then why did you scrub the wall?" She blinked. "What?" "The wall," I repeated, "on the side of the dining room doorway. You scrubbed it. Fresh streak marks. You must have wiped so fast you didn't notice you missed a spot." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Marcus's head snapped toward her. "What wall?" She recovered quickly, but not quickly enough. I don't, maybe Caleb spilled something." I completed the sentence for her in my mind. Something red, something like a drop of blood. I placed the broken phone on the officer's desk. "Officer Ramirez, I need to sign my grandson out now." He nodded. "Of course, ma'am." Natalie lunged forward. "You can't take him. He lives with us." I turned toward her slowly. "Oh, I'm not taking him away permanently, not yet, but I'm taking him tonight, and until this is sorted out, you will not be in a room alone with him." Her face twisted, not in fear, in rage. Rage that her story was falling apart. But I wasn't done, not even close. Something told me that what happened tonight was only the surface of a deeper, darker truth hiding under that roof. And I was about to dig it up. When a lie starts unraveling, it doesn't do it politely. It snaps. It tears. And the person who spun it will fight like a cornered animal to keep it from falling apart. That night, I watched that unraveling begin, thread by thread. After I signed the release forms, Officer Ramirez walked Caleb and me toward the exit. I could feel Natalie's eyes burning holes in my back, but I didn't give her the satisfaction of a single glance. When the door slid open and the cold Virginia air rushed in, Caleb exhaled shakily, like he'd been underwater all day and finally reached the surface. I placed my hand on his shoulder. "You're coming home with me tonight, sweetheart." He nodded, but his gaze drifted toward the parking lot, to where his father stood alone, hands in his pockets, staring at the asphalt like it might offer him advice. "Grandma," he whispered, "do you think he'll ever believe me?" My heart squeezed. "I think he will," I said carefully, "but sometimes people take longer to see the truth when it lives right inside their home." Caleb looked down at his shoes. "She said if I ever told anyone, she'd make it look like I was out of control, that Dad would choose her." I studied his face. A bruise just beginning to purple near his jaw, a swelling under his left eye. Marks that told a story louder than Natalie ever could. "Did she threaten you before tonight?" I asked gently. His lips pressed into a thin, trembling line. "Twice. Twice." A chill wrapped around my spine. That meant this wasn't an outburst, it was a pattern. "Grandma," he said suddenly, voice cracking, "I heard her on the phone earlier. She said she was tired of dealing with me, that once Dad got full custody paperwork filed, she could handle things her way." The world tilted for a moment. Custody? Handle things? I felt something primal rise inside me. We reached the curb just as the rideshare I ordered pulled up. I guided Caleb in first, then settled beside him. As we pulled away from the precinct, I watched Marcus still standing there, stuck between the woman he married and the child he brought into the world. And I wondered, not for the first time, how love could blind a man so deeply he couldn't see the danger sitting at his dinner table. At my house, I fixed Caleb something warm to eat, even though it was almost 4 in the morning. He barely touched it. His hands kept shaking. "Is it okay if I take a shower?" he asked quietly. "Of course," I said. "Take your time." When he went upstairs, I sat alone at my kitchen table, and every instinct I'd ever honed on the job told me one thing. Natalie wasn't just manipulative, not just controlling, not just abusive. She was covering something, and she was desperate to keep it hidden. I stood up and walked to the small, unlocked safe in my hallway closet. I pulled out a thin folder, the one I kept for emergencies. Inside were copies of documents I never thought I'd need again, my old investigation templates, contact information for former colleagues, and a list of legal steps to protect a minor during domestic conflicts. Old habits never die. They just wait. By the time Caleb came downstairs in fresh clothes, wrapped in one of my big cotton robes, I already had a plan laid out on the table. He sat across from me, eyes soft but tired. "What now?" he whispered. I reached over and took his hand. "Now," I said, "we find the truth, all of it, and we make sure your father sees it with his own eyes." He swallowed. "Grandma, she's not going to like that." "No," I agreed. "People who abuse others never like being exposed." A long silence passed before he spoke again. "I think she's hiding something in the house," he said suddenly. "Something she doesn't want Dad to know. I heard her arguing with someone on the phone last week. She told them, 'You'll get your money when things settle down.'" Money? A secret phone call? Threats? It wasn't just abuse. Something deeper was rotting under that household. And I was about to drag it into the light. When a child tells you they've seen shadows in their own home, you don't ignore it. Shadows don't just mean darkness. Sometimes they mean someone's been hiding in plain sight. Caleb's words lingered in the air like smoke, thick, unsettling, impossible to ignore. "You heard her say that?" I asked. He nodded. "She was in the laundry room. She thought I couldn't hear her." He swallowed. "Grandma, I think she owed somebody money, a lot of it." A cold quiet settled between us. Debt, threats, abuse, secrets. This wasn't just a troubled marriage. This was something that could pull my grandson into real danger. "Caleb," I said softly, "has anything ever gone missing in the house? Papers, valuables, cash, anything?" He hesitated, thinking. "Well, Dad had these investment statements and insurance papers he kept in his desk. Last month, he said he couldn't find some of them, and his password changed, but he thought he just forgot it." My jaw clenched. Nothing in my experience has ever screamed louder than a spouse secretly accessing financial accounts. "You did the right thing telling me," I said, "and we're going to piece this together, carefully." He nodded, though his hands trembled again. The clock read 4:22 a.m. My house was silent, except for the gentle hum of the refrigerator. But inside me, the storm had already begun. I picked up my old phone, my private one, the number only a few retired colleagues still knew, and dialed someone I hadn't called in years. He answered on the second ring. "Well, I'll be damned if it isn't Agent Walker." I smiled faintly. "I need a favor, Mark." His tone shifted instantly. "What's going on?" "A domestic situation. My grandson. I need background checks run discreetly, especially on a woman named Natalie Walker. Look into her financials. Any civil suits, evictions, liens, or criminal complaints." A pause. "Lucille, tell me what's wrong." "She hurt my grandson," I said, my voice low, "and I have reason to believe she's involved in something bigger, something she's trying hard to hide." He exhaled sharply. "I'm on it. I'll call you back within a few hours." I hung up. Across the table, Caleb watched me carefully. "You're really going to investigate her?" "Oh, baby," I said gently. "I started the investigation the moment she laid a hand on you." He pressed his robe closer to his chest, the worry settling back into his shoulders. "What if she finds out?" "She won't," I assured him, "and even if she does, she won't get the chance to hurt you again." Later that morning, after a few hours of uneasy sleep, I fixed us breakfast. Pancakes and scrambled eggs, the same thing I used to make Marcus when he was Caleb's age. The smell filled the house, bringing a warmth I hoped would ease some of the tension. Caleb ate slowly, quietly. "Grandma, can we go back?" he asked suddenly. My fork stilled. "Back where?" "The house. I want to show you something." My heart thudded once, heavy and cold. "Sweetheart," I began, "you're not safe there right now." "I know," he said quickly, "but when she was yelling last week, she dropped something. It rolled under the hallway cupboard. I saw part of it. I didn't touch it, but—" he swallowed hard. "It looked like a check, with my dad's signature on it, but he wasn't home that day." Forgery. My body went still. This wasn't speculation anymore. This wasn't guesswork. This was evidence. And the fact that she'd carelessly dropped it meant she was slipping. "Caleb," I said cautiously, "did you see the amount?" He nodded. $20,000. $20,000. I inhaled slowly through my nose, steadying myself. "All right," I whispered. "If we go together, and we won't be going through the front door." His eyes widened. "You mean, like—" I held up a hand. "Nothing illegal, but I know that house, and I know the places she forgets to lock." I stood, grabbed my coat, and slid my investigation folder into my bag. "Finish your breakfast," I told him gently. "We're leaving in 10 minutes. "Grandma—" "Yes, sweetheart." "What if she's there?" I looked him straight in the eyes. "Then tonight, she won't be the only one with a story to tell." There's a quiet kind of fear that settles in your bones when you walk back into a house that once felt like home, especially when you know someone inside has been pretending, lying, and hiding things in the dark. But fear or not, I was done letting shadows win. Caleb sat beside me in the car, his fingers tapping nervously against his knee while the morning sun crept across the dashboard. The closer we got to that house, the tenser he became. "You don't have to do this if you're scared," I told him softly. He looked at me, eyes steady despite the worry in them. "I want to," he whispered. I want Dad to know the truth. Truth. A simple word that holds the power to break or rebuild a family. When we pulled into the neighborhood, the familiar two-story house looked calm. Too calm. No car in the driveway, no curtains shifting, no sign of Natalie. I scanned the street carefully. The instincts never fade. "All right," I said, shutting off the engine. "Stay behind me, and don't touch anything unless I tell you." We walked toward the side of the house where the old garden gate still stuck at the hinge. Caleb pressed it open and led me to the small storage door by the kitchen, one I remembered always needing a harder shove. He turned the knob. It opened. My jaw tightened. "That woman doesn't even know how to secure a house," I muttered. Inside, the familiar smell of cleaning supplies, dust, and cool concrete hit us. The storage hallway connected directly to the laundry room, a perfect entry where we wouldn't be heard. Caleb motioned toward the hallway cupboard he had mentioned. "It fell down there," he whispered. I knelt down, reached under carefully with a gloved hand, old investigator habits, and felt paper. Several sheets, actually, not just one. When I pulled them out, I had to steady myself. 3 checks, each signed with Marcus's name. Same signature, same ink thickness, same shaky imitation. All dated within the last 2 months, all made out to the same individual. "Caleb," I whispered, "do you know this name?" He shook his head. "Never heard it." I swallowed hard. Forgery was one thing, but this name? This wasn't a relative, a friend, or any known contact. Something deeper was going on. I placed the checks in a protective sleeve from my bag and stood. Let's keep looking. We searched the laundry room first, nothing unusual, then the hall, the kitchen, the family room. Everything carefully placed, spotless, but too spotless. A house with a teenager and 2 adults doesn't gleam like a staged home without a reason. When we reached the master bedroom, Caleb hesitated. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded, but I could see the fear hiding under his resolve. I opened the door slowly. The room smelled like perfume, heavy, floral, suffocating. The bed was made too neatly, the nightstands empty, the blinds half open, casting stripes of light across the floor. Then we noticed it. A small, locked box tucked beneath the vanity stool. Caleb breathed out, "That wasn't there before." I crouched and lifted it. Heavy, metal, a cheap lock that wouldn't survive much pressure. "Stand back," I murmured. Using a firm strike with the heel of my boot, just the right angle, the lock snapped open with a crack. Inside were envelopes, stacks of them, some sealed, some torn open. All addressed to Natalie. Debt collection notices, warnings, payment demands, final notices. And then, a thick envelope containing something that made my stomach turn. I slid the contents out. Photos. Not of Caleb, not of Marcus, but of another house in another part of Virginia. Different man in the pictures, middle-aged, standing with Natalie, her hand on his back, her smiling the same rehearsed smile she gave Marcus. Caleb whispered, "Grandma, who is that?" I took a breath. This man, he's not just a friend, and these pictures, they're recent. At the bottom of the stack was an image dated 3 weeks ago. The man handing her an envelope, her smiling, a transaction. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just infidelity. This wasn't just financial fraud. This was a full double life. 2 homes, 2 men, 2 financial trails, and my son trapped in the middle without a clue. I looked at Caleb firmly. "Sweetheart, your stepmother isn't just dangerous." I held up the photos. "She's been running a scheme." And now that we had proof, I knew exactly what had to come next. Expose her, publicly, legally, and decisively, before she destroyed anyone else. There's a special kind of anger that only rises when you finally see the full picture, when all the whispers, bruises, and late-night fears line up into a truth so ugly it steals your breath. That morning, standing in that quiet bedroom, the truth hit me like a freight train. The photos trembled in my hand, not because I was scared, but because fury has a way of waking every nerve in your body. Caleb watched my face, trying to read my reaction, but he didn't need to. "What does it mean?" he asked softly. I steadied myself. "It means your stepmother has been lying to your father, and probably to this other man too. It means she's been taking money from both." His eyes widened with dread. "Grandma, is she trying to leave us?" "No," I said slowly. "She's trying to drain everything before she does. And she didn't want you getting in the way." Caleb's breath hitched. It made too much sense. The threats, the fear, the sudden fights she started only when Marcus wasn't around, the way she tried controlling Caleb's movements, his phone, even his school contacts. She wasn't trying to build a family. She was trying to make sure nobody noticed what she was stealing. And the bruises? Those weren't accidents. They were warnings. I pulled out my phone and snapped pictures of everything. Every letter, every check, every photo. Evidence, all neatly laid out like she'd prepared the case herself. "Grandma," Caleb whispered, "I hear a car." My ears perked. Footsteps. A car door closing. I placed the documents back quickly, leaving no sign we'd touched anything. "Go," I whispered, "down the hallway, through the side door, now." He obeyed without question. I followed close behind, but as we reached the laundry room, I heard it, the unmistakable click of the front door opening. Then her voice. "Marcus, you home?" My heart dropped. Natalie. Of all the times she could return, it had to be now. Caleb froze. His breath caught. I grabbed his arm gently but firmly. "It's all right," I whispered. "We're leaving." But we only got 3 steps before her silhouette appeared at the end of the hallway. She stopped when she saw us. Her eyes narrowed. Something in her face twisted. Not fear, not surprise, but calculation. "Well," she said slowly, "isn't this interesting?" Caleb stepped behind me, his entire body trembling. I shielded him with mine. "We're leaving," I said. "Move." She smirked. "You had no right to be in my house." "Your house?" I raised an eyebrow. "Last time I checked, this home belongs to my son, and I found a few things that don't quite match your sweet little stories." Her jaw tightened. "You went through my things?" "I didn't have to go far," I replied calmly. "You left your secrets scattered like confetti." She took one slow step toward us. "You don't know what you're talking about, Lucille." "Oh," I said, voice low, "I know exactly what you're doing. The forged checks, the debt collectors, the other man sending you money, and the threats against my grandson." For the first time, her mask slipped. Her lips tightened. Her eyes flared. But she recovered quickly. "She's lying," she hissed at Caleb. "She's trying to turn you against me." "Enough," I snapped. She took another step. "Get out of my way." I squared my shoulders. "I spent almost 3 decades reading liars, honey. And you're one of the sloppiest I've ever seen." Her eyes darkened. Then she lunged. Not at me, at Caleb. Pure instinct took over. I stepped in front of him, blocking her so fast she stumbled. She wasn't expecting resistance. She wasn't expecting anyone to stand between her and the boy she'd been tormenting. "Touch him again," I said quietly, "and you won't just be dealing with me. You'll be dealing with the law." Her nostrils flared. "You can't prove anything." "Oh, sweetheart," I whispered, leaning in, "I already can." She froze, just for a moment. And in that moment, I realized something. She wasn't afraid of exposure. She was afraid of losing control. "Caleb," I said without breaking eye contact, "go to the car." He didn't move at first. Grandma, now, I said gently, I'll be right behind you. He slipped past me and ran toward the side door. Natalie stared at me with hatred so sharp it felt like a blade. You're going to regret this, she whispered. Oh, I doubt that, I replied. I backed up slowly, keeping my eyes on her until I was out the door. Then I locked it behind me. Once Caleb and I were in the car, he burst into tears. You did good, I murmured, pulling him close. It's over. She can't hide anymore. But even as I said it, I knew the hardest part was still ahead. Because exposing a liar is one thing. Convincing the man who loves her, that is a battle all its own. You can collect every piece of evidence, every bruised truth, every whisper in the dark, but the hardest part of betrayal is showing it to someone who swears they're in love. I knew the storm waiting ahead, but I also knew there was no turning back. We drove straight from the house to a quiet park near my home, not because I needed fresh air, no. I needed a place where Caleb could breathe without fear pressing against his chest. He sat on the swing beside me, gently rocking, staring at the gravel beneath his shoes. Grandma, he whispered, what if Dad still chooses her? The question hit me harder than anything that night. I took a shaky breath. Sweetheart, people don't always choose truth right away. Sometimes they choose comfort. Sometimes they choose the version of the story that hurts less. He stopped rocking. So, what do? We show him anyway, I said softly, because love doesn't protect lies. It destroys them. I didn't want to waste another moment, so I called Marcus. He picked up on the third ring, voice groggy and strained. Mom, where are you? I woke up and Caleb's gone. He's safe, I said, but you need to come to Evergreen Park, right now. He sighed. Mom, I don't have the energy for another argument. This isn't an argument, I said. It's the truth, and you're going to hear it. Something in my tone must have reached the old version of him, the one who used to trust me. He murmured, I'll be there. 20 minutes later, his car pulled up beside us. Marcus stepped out slowly, shoulders slumped, eyes tired. When he saw Caleb, guilt flickered across his face. Son, he said softly. Caleb didn't respond. He just folded his arms and stared at the ground. I didn't waste time. Sit, I said to Marcus. He obeyed. I opened my bag and placed the stack of printed photos, debt notices, and images of the forged checks in front of him. At first, he stared blankly. Then confusion crossed his face. Then disbelief. Then a quiet horror that spread like cracks through glass. Mom, what is this? He whispered. Your wife's secrets, I said. Her other man, her forged checks, her debt, her lies, and the abuse she's been hiding under your roof. He shook his head hard, like he could knock the truth out of his ears. No, Natalie wouldn't. This can't. It can, I said. It did. I placed my hand over the photo of the man she'd been seeing. This picture was taken 3 weeks ago, and that envelope he's handing her, it wasn't a love letter. Marcus swallowed, his Adam's apple bobbing. What has she been doing? Draining you, I said, slowly, carefully, hoping you'd catch on too late. He looked at Caleb then, really looked at him, for the first time since this nightmare started. Son, did she really hit you? Caleb's voice trembled, but he stood firm. Yes. Marcus closed his eyes. His breath shook. And right there in that quiet park, I watched him crumble, not out of weakness, but because a man can only take so much truth before it breaks him. After a long silence, he whispered, Mom, what do I do? I squeezed his hand. First, you protect your son. Then you file a report. Then you cut every tie she's used to trap you. He nodded slowly, determined, awake at last. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I saw the man I raised finally return to himself. That night didn't end with shouting. It didn't end with a fight. It ended with resolve. Marcus filed the report. Officers escorted Natalie off the property, and the investigation that followed uncovered even more of her scheme. Other victims, other accounts, other lies she'd buried under charm and manipulation. She wasn't just a bad stepmother. She was a fraudster wearing a wedding ring she never earned. And Caleb? He slept in my guest room for weeks, healing one slow breath at a time. Sometimes betrayal doesn't shatter you. Sometimes it clears the fog so you can finally see the people worth fighting for. And that boy, my grandson, was worth every battle. If you followed this story to the end, I would love to hear what you think. Was justice served? What would you have done in this grandmother's shoes? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, full of emotion, mystery, and quiet justice, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Mabel's Stories. Your engagement helps more people discover these stories. Thank you for listening.